Begin with intense, building heartbeat sounds. Have you ever imagined a day when humanity is no longer the underdog in the universe? A mysterious warship appears, obliterating an entire alien fleet in minutes, then disappears into space, leaving millions of unanswered questions. We only had one chance, and this time, no one could save us except for the secrets humanity had forgotten. But this isn't a story of knights in battle. This is the tale of a mysterious ship, of a force that even the greatest empires of the galaxy fear to challenge. Don't miss out, because you won't want to miss the shocking revelations coming your way. Watch the whole video to find out how humanity stands its ground against the appearance of the Enterprise, a ship that even the alien fleets trembled before. Welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Story, where thrilling sci-fi tales, love, and war await you. If you're into intergalactic adventures, uncovering the deepest secrets of the universe, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on the notifications for more. The vastness of space seemed to stretch infinitely before me, a cold and indifferent sea of black, the stars mere pinpricks of light in the abyss. The silence was oppressive, as if the entire universe was holding its breath. My grip tightened around the railing of the UESS Swift's command deck, the cool metal biting into my palms. The air felt thick, almost stifling, despite the high-tech life support systems in place. It was as if the weight of what was about to unfold in the dark expanse outside the ship was pressing in on all sides. Through the main view screen, I could see the alien armada. There were at least 20 dreadnoughts in perfect formation, their monstrous shapes gliding through space with eerie precision. Each ship was armed to the teeth, bristling with the telltale glow of antimatter cannons, weapons capable of erasing entire cities in the blink of an eye. I could feel the hum of the ship beneath my feet, a constant reminder that we were mere seconds away from disaster. Europa 7, the human colony, was already in their sights. 200,000 civilians were trapped. Their fate would be sealed in minutes unless we did something. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, feeling the coldness of the metal beneath my feet, grounding myself. My mind was racing, trying to find a solution. Surrender? The very thought of it made my stomach turn. Our colony, our people, no, I refused to let this be the end. This was not the way humanity would fall. I had spent my entire life in the military, trained to fight, to protect. The idea of retreating from such a battle felt like a betrayal, a cowardice I was unwilling to accept. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Park's voice cut through my thoughts, his tone tight with urgency. His face, usually stoic, was grim, reflecting the weight of the moment. His eyes met mine, unwavering, and I saw in them the same determination that fueled me. "Fleet Command acknowledges our distress call. No reinforcements available. We are ordered to evaluate key personnel and withdraw." I could feel the blood draining from my face as his words hit me like a punch to the gut. Withdrawal? Evacuation? The thought of abandoning Europa 7 was unbearable, but what else could we do? Our ship, the UESS Swift, was a reconnaissance vessel, fast, but lightly armed. The colony's meager defense platforms would last maybe 15 minutes against the incoming fleet. If we withdrew, 200,000 people would die. There had to be another way. There always was. My hands gripped the railing tighter, my knuckles turning white as the reality of the situation pressed down on me. "We can't just run," I muttered under my breath, my voice barely above a whisper. "I won't abandon them." "Send one more transmission," I commanded, my voice steadier than I felt. "On all frequencies, including the old emergency bands. Authentication code, Blackwatch Omega." A tense silence followed. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. I could see the doubt in their eyes. Blackwatch Omega was just a myth. A last resort, a desperate plea from a time long past, a signal that didn't exist, a hope that had been lost to history. It was a story told only in whispered conversations among veteran spacers, a legend for those who had survived battles that the rest of the galaxy would prefer to forget. I could see the hesitation in Lieutenant Park's eyes, but I also saw something else, something unspoken. He understood. This wasn't just another desperate attempt to survive. This was our last chance. Send it, I ordered again, my voice firm, though my heart was pounding in my chest. The cold sweat on my palms was soaking into the metal of the railing. I wasn't sure who we were calling or what we were hoping to find. But I wasn't going to sit here and do nothing. Park hesitated only for a moment, before his fingers moved swiftly across the console, sending the transmission into the void of space. The pulse pattern was simple, barely more than a heartbeat in the dark expanse. But there was something in that pulse, something ancient, that felt different. Maybe it was nothing more than a relic of desperation. Or maybe it was something more, something humanity had forgotten, or worse, chosen to forget. The Valkyrie armada continued its slow advance toward Europa 7. They had no reason to fear us. They were invincible. Their ships, enormous and relentless, were closing in. I couldn't look away from the view screen. Each passing moment brought them closer. My breath caught in my throat. My mind screamed for a miracle, but there was no time for miracles. There was only time for action. Captain, shouldn't we be positioning for evacuation? Commander Reeves asked, his voice low but insistent. His eyes were filled with a quiet worry. He wasn't like Park, he wasn't someone who could pretend that everything would turn out fine. But his question rang hollow, because I already knew the answer. Not yet. There's an old Earth saying, I replied, barely thinking. Fortune favors the bold. The words didn't make sense, not in this moment of impending death, but I said them anyway. It was all I had to hold on to. If we were going to survive, if we were going to make it out of this, we would need more than just the power of our ship. We would need something beyond reason, beyond belief. Something that had been whispered about for centuries. As the seconds ticked by, the weight of the moment seemed to grow heavier. It wasn't just the armada outside, it was the desperation, the knowledge that we were facing an enemy we had no hope of defeating. I was holding on to a thread, a myth, and praying that it would be enough to save us. And as I watched the alien ships draw closer, I couldn't shake the feeling that something, somewhere, was about to change. I stared at the view screen, my eyes narrowing as the ripple in space stretched wider, like a tear opening in the fabric of the universe itself. The coldness of space outside our ship had always felt unyielding, infinite. But this anomaly was different. It wasn't just a crack in space, it was something much more ominous, a disturbance that seemed to suck in all the light around it. The once serene blackness of the cosmos was now marred by this unnatural phenomenon. It twisted and warped, expanding with impossible speed. My heart skipped a beat, and my breath caught in my throat. Every instinct I had as a captain, every survival instinct, screamed at me that this was no ordinary event. I had seen anomalies before, minor rifts, electrical malfunctions, and the occasional erratic blip on the radar. But this was something else entirely. The very fabric of space was unraveling before our eyes. Park, are you sure about this? I asked, my voice low but steady, trying to keep the uncertainty out of it. The crew was already tense, and I needed them to remain calm. Panic was a luxury we couldn't afford. Park's fingers flew across the console, his face pale in the harsh glow of the monitors. Yes, Captain. The readings are, he paused, then swallowed hard. Energy levels, they're off the charts, Captain. This isn't a natural phenomenon. I felt my stomach tighten. What do you mean? What's coming through? Park didn't reply immediately. His eyes were glued to his console, scanning the data, but I could see the hesitation in his posture. It was the kind of hesitation that came from a place of fear of what he couldn't fully comprehend. My eyes flicked to the main screen again, and that's when I saw it. At first, it was a shimmer, like heat waves rising from a desert floor, distorting the stars around it. But then, the waves began to intensify, swirling faster, more erratically, as if something was forcing its way through from the other side. The distortion grew wider, faster, until it began to take shape, something massive, emerging from the rift. I leaned forward, my pulse racing. The vortex stretched and pulled at the very edges of space, unraveling the darkness as it widened, like a door opening to another world. Then, I saw it, the bow of a ship, sleek and black, sliding into normal space as though it had always belonged there. The ship seemed to absorb the very light around it, turning the stars into faint, distant whispers. It was a ship of darkness, so obsidian in color that it looked as if it was forged from the very void of space itself. "By the gods," Reeves whispered, his voice barely audible. I felt a chill run through my spine. The sheer size of the vessel was incomprehensible. It dwarfed even the largest of the Valkyrie dreadnoughts, ships that were already giants in their own right. This thing, it was something from beyond the reach of human understanding. It didn't belong here, not in our galaxy, not in our time. The ship moved with a fluidity that defied its massive size, cutting through the vacuum of space with terrifying grace. It was as if it was carving its own path through reality, bending the laws of physics to its will. The sheer presence of it felt wrong, like the universe itself was bending and contorting under its power. "Park," I ordered, my voice tight with urgency. "Magnify. I need to see everything. All details." The view screen zoomed in, and the ship came into sharper focus. Along its long, dark hull, there were strange markings, symbols that seemed to shimmer faintly, as though they were alive. Ancient Earth numerals were barely visible, CVN 80. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. The ship's design was unlike anything human-made. Its surface seemed to absorb all light, and every inch of it hummed with an energy that was palpable, even through the cold vacuum of space. "That's impossible," Reeves muttered. "It's the Enterprise." The name echoed through the bridge like a ghost from the past. The Enterprise? The ship thought to be lost, erased from the records of history? The prototype supercarrier that had vanished from Earth's orbital shipyard more than 60 years ago? No one had ever known what had happened to it. Official reports said it had been destroyed during classified testing. But here it was, alive, in front of us, its dark hull swallowing the light around it. Is it really possible? Park's voice was filled with awe and disbelief. The Enterprise? The one from the old legends? Yes, I breathed, barely able to comprehend it myself. The Black Fleet flagship. It's real. The ship moved slowly at first, but with an elegance that belied its size. It positioned itself between the colony and the approaching Valkyrie fleet, its presence a dark promise of something far beyond our understanding. No running lights. No standard identification beacons. It was as if the ship itself was a part of the darkness, an entity of mystery and power. No one could understand its purpose, its origins, or its purpose here. The Valkyrie fleet, which had been charging forward, now hesitated. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in their movements, their precise, perfect formation breaking apart as they tried to assess the threat before them. A few moments of silence passed before a new signal hit our comms. It was audio only, and it was unmistakable in its distortion. "UESS Swift," the voice said, deliberately garbled, "this is the Enterprise." Authentication Blackwatch confirmed. "Stand by." I barely had time to process the words before the screen flickered again. The Valkyrie ships had moved to engage the newcomer. The first dreadnought fired. Energy beams shot from its cannons, slicing through the vacuum of space. But they never reached their target. The beams simply disappeared as if absorbed by the very material of the Enterprise's hull. "Shields?" Park whispered, disbelief in his voice. "No shields," I said, my voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline in my veins. "That hull just absorbed it." The Enterprise stood motionless, accepting the barrage. But I could see the subtle shift in its structure. The surface reconfigured, opening like a dormant beast awakening from a long slumber. Weapon ports materialized from within its obsidian shell, glowing with a silent, terrifying promise. Then, without warning, the ship fired. A single pulse erupted from its core, expanding into a massive, geometric web of energy. The lead Valkyrie dreadnought never stood a chance. In the blink of an eye, it was gone, vanished. Not destroyed. Erased. "Park, are you reading this?" I demanded, my voice a whisper of awe. "Yes, Captain," he replied, his voice shaking. Energy readings, they're off the charts. The ship, it's rewriting the rules of combat. The remaining Valkyrie vessels hesitated, but it was too late. The Enterprise moved with terrifying speed, its weapons tearing through the enemy fleet one by one, with surgical precision. It was like watching a hunter stalk its prey in the silence of space, silent, deadly, inevitable. Within minutes, half of the Valkyrie fleet was reduced to nothingness, their ships simply vanishing from existence, leaving nothing behind but the vast emptiness of space. The power of the Enterprise was beyond anything I had ever imagined. And as the last of the enemy ships were destroyed, I realized this wasn't just a ship. It was a force. A force beyond comprehension. A force that had been hidden for so long, waiting for the right moment to emerge from the shadows. And in that moment, I knew our lives, our future, had just been irrevocably changed. The rift in space grew wider, its jagged edges distorting the very fabric of the universe around it, like a wound in the cosmos that refused to heal. From within that darkness, something impossibly massive emerged. It wasn't just another ship, it was an entity, a thing of pure night, pulling in every bit of starlight and turning the surrounding void into an endless shadow. Its surface absorbed the light, creating an almost physical darkness that pushed outwards, smothering the space around it. At first, it was only a silhouette, an imposing shadow against the backdrop of the stars. But as it slowly moved into normal space, the shape of the vessel became clearer. The sheer size of it was beyond anything I had ever imagined. Even the largest of the Valkyrie dreadnoughts, their massive hulls bristling with weapons and shields, seemed to shrink in comparison to the ship now gliding towards us. The silence of space was suddenly shattered, as though the universe itself held its breath, watching this impossible apparition take shape. CVN-80. Commander Reeves whispered, his voice barely audible as if speaking too loudly would break the spell. My God. The Enterprise. I felt my pulse spike, the air around me growing thick with disbelief. The Enterprise. The ship of legend. The myth. I had heard the stories, passed down in hushed tones among old spacers, about a warship so powerful that no fleet could stand against it. A ship that had vanished from Earth's orbital shipyard more than 60 years ago, officially listed as destroyed during a classified military test. No one had seen it since. It was supposed to be gone, erased from history. But there it was, real and present before us, materializing from the rift like a specter summoned from the depths of time. This can't be real, I muttered under my breath, my eyes locked on the view screen, unable to look away. It was as if the universe itself had decided to defy logic, to bring a myth to life, and in doing so, had altered everything I thought I knew about our place in the cosmos. The massive black warship moved into position with an eerie, almost fluid grace, its hull cutting through space as though the laws of physics were suggestions, not rules. Each kilometer of its surface was cloaked in dark plating, so black it seemed to suck in the light around it. There were no running lights, no identification beacons, nothing to tell us what it was or where it came from. It was simply there, a dark monolith in the void, impossibly large, yet moving with a precision and silence that made it all the more terrifying. Park's voice broke through the stunned silence, his words shaking, but his training keeping him steady. We're being hailed, Captain. Audio only. The tension in the air thickened as the words came through the comms, the voice deliberately distorted, as though to hide its true nature. It was calm, commanding, yet there was something unnerving about it. UESS Swift, this is the Enterprise. Authentication Blackwatch confirmed. Stand by. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving nothing but static. For a moment, the silence in the command deck was deafening, broken only by the steady hum of the ship's systems. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what was happening, but nothing made sense. The Valkyrie fleet, so close to destroying us all, now hesitated. They had been moving in on us with relentless force, but now, they were shifting course, turning their massive dreadnoughts to face the new threat that had materialized out of nowhere. I couldn't help but stare at the massive warship on the screen. It wasn't just the size of it that struck me, it was the feeling that came with it. The sensation of power, ancient and unchallenged, radiating off the ship like an aura. The Enterprise was not merely a warship. It was a symbol, an embodiment of something beyond the reach of normal space, a relic of a forgotten age, a thing that should never have existed, yet there it was, defying all reason. The Valkyrie ships, still unsure of what to make of the situation, began to adjust their formations. But the Enterprise did not move. It was positioned between the Armada and Europa 7, as if it were drawing a line in the sand, daring the enemy to cross it. And in that stillness, in that calm before the storm, I realized just how insignificant we were in the face of something so ancient and powerful. "Park," I said, my voice steady despite the maelstrom of thoughts running through my mind. "What's the status of the enemy fleet?" "They're changing course, Captain," Park replied, his voice filled with disbelief. "They're moving to engage the Enterprise." I could see the fleet's dreadnoughts moving, their massive engines flaring to life as they altered their trajectory. The Valkyrie ships, now aware of the new threat, opened fire. The first blast came from the lead dreadnought, a brilliant beam of energy that shot across the black expanse of space, aimed directly at the Enterprise. But the beam didn't strike the ship as expected. It simply vanished. As though the very fabric of space around the Enterprise had swallowed the attack whole, rendering it powerless. Park's voice came through again, this time barely more than a whisper. "No shields, Captain. That hull, it just absorbed the energy. There was no resistance. It's like the ship, it's not even affected by the attack." The Enterprise remained still, unmoving, as though it were a part of the space itself, immune to the laws of physics that governed everything else. The Valkyrie fleet hesitated, unsure of how to proceed, but the Enterprise had no such hesitation. Its weapon ports opened, dark recesses of its hull revealing themselves, and from within, a pulse of energy shot out, silent, deadly, and unlike anything I had ever seen. The blast expanded, spreading out like a web of pure power, engulfing the lead Valkyrie dreadnought in a flash. When the light faded, the dreadnought was gone, erased from existence. Not destroyed, not damaged. Simply vanished. For a moment, the bridge was silent, as the rest of the Valkyrie fleet faltered, unsure of what to do next. The immense power of the Enterprise was something they had never encountered. Something that could not be measured by their standards, their weapons, or their knowledge. The Enterprise had made its first move. And the galaxy had just witnessed something that no one could comprehend. The first blast from the Valkyrie dreadnought shattered the silence of space, a streak of brilliant energy lancing through the void, aimed squarely at the dark monolith that was the Enterprise. The beam struck the black hole with an intensity that should have torn through it, but to our astonishment, the beam simply disappeared, swallowed whole by the ship's surface as if the very fabric of reality was bending around it. There was no explosion, no ripple of impact. The energy beam vanished, absorbed by the ship without a trace. Park's voice was thick with disbelief. "Shields? There's no reaction. The hull just took it." The air in the command deck was charged with an unspoken fear. It was as though the universe had forgotten the laws of physics, defying every rule we had come to rely on. The Enterprise didn't even flinch. It didn't move an inch. The enemy's firepower, so overwhelming to us, seemed to have no effect. The ship remained motionless, poised like a statue in the emptiness of space. The Valkyrie fleet unleashed salvo after salvo, their weapons lighting up the dark void, but every single beam simply vanished against the Enterprise's impenetrable hull. "Captain, are we seeing this?" Park asked, his voice tight with incredulity. "There's no defense, no shields. It's like the ship is made of something else." I could barely breathe. The scene before me was like a dream, a nightmare that didn't make sense. The lead Valkyrie ship continued its barrage, its weapons sending waves of deadly energy, each blast more intense than the last. But the Enterprise stood unwavering. It was like a shadow, an unstoppable force that simply absorbed whatever came at it, its surface shimmering briefly in the flickering light of the energy beams. There was no sign of weakness, no evidence that the ship was even affected. It was as if the very concept of attack didn't exist for this vessel. Then, as if it had grown bored of waiting, the Enterprise responded. Its dark surface began to shift and reconfigure, the sleek obsidian plating separating with a slow, deliberate precision. It was subtle at first, as if the ship itself was alive, its metallic skin rippling and opening, revealing weapon ports that had been hidden until now. The vessel seemed to pulse with new life as those hidden sections of its hull opened like the jaws of some ancient, sleeping predator awakening. A single, focused pulse of energy shot from the open ports. It was nothing like the previous blasts from the Valkyrie dreadnoughts. It was quiet, unassuming at first, but the moment it struck the lead Valkyrie ship, everything changed. The pulse expanded instantly, growing into a web of geometric light, its tendrils reaching out and engulfing the target ship. There was no explosion, no fireball. The ship didn't break apart or crumble. It simply ceased to exist. The Valkyrie dreadnought vanished, as though it had never been there at all. No trace remained, no debris, no wreckage. It was as though the ship had been erased from existence, wiped from the fabric of the universe in a single, silent pulse. The bridge fell silent as the impossible became reality. The other ships in the Valkyrie fleet paused, their movements slowing as they tried to comprehend what had just happened. Their most powerful ship, their flagship, had been eradicated in an instant. For a long moment, no one spoke. The atmosphere in the command deck was thick with disbelief, and even the distant hum of the ship's engines seemed to fade away. Then, as if it had all been part of some cruel game, the remaining Valkyrie ships began to break formation. Some tried to scatter, their engines flaring to life as they attempted to flee in different directions. But it was too late. The Enterprise didn't move, it simply turned, as if it had all the time in the universe, and locked onto the next target. Its weapon systems came to life again, a rhythmic pulse of energy stretching across the void, hitting each ship with surgical precision. There was no desperation in the Enterprise's actions, just a cold, calculated efficiency. The remaining Valkyrie ships were picked off one by one, their attempts to escape futile. They were no longer a threat. Within minutes, half of the fleet had been erased, their presence in the galaxy nothing more than a distant memory. There were no explosions, no dramatic final stands. The ships simply vanished, as though they had been absorbed into the infinite dark, consumed by the unyielding power of the Enterprise. The final Valkyrie ship, desperate and alone, tried to make one last stand. Its weapons fired wildly, its engines roaring as it accelerated into the path of the dark Leviathan. But it was too slow, too predictable. A single pulse of energy shot out from the Enterprise, and the ship was gone, its final moments lost to the void. I stood frozen, watching in stunned silence as the last of the enemy fleet was wiped out in mere moments. There was no victory dance, no triumphant cheer. There was only the quiet hum of the ship's engines, and the faint echo of what had just occurred. The power on display was unlike anything I had ever seen. The Valkyrie fleet, the mightiest force in the galaxy, had been reduced to nothing more than ashes in the wind. Park, his voice barely above a whisper, finally spoke. "Captain, it's over. The fleet, it's gone. We're alive." But even as he spoke those words, I couldn't shake the feeling that something much larger was at play. We weren't just witnessing a battle. We were witnessing the emergence of something beyond our understanding, something that had been hidden, waiting for the right moment to show itself. The Enterprise had come, and in its wake, the galaxy would never be the same again. We had survived, but we were no longer the same. The myth had become reality, and with it came a new chapter, one that we were powerless to understand. The Enterprise had spoken, and the galaxy had listened. The transmission crackled to life, its mechanical distortion filling the stillness of the bridge. "Colony is secure. Remain in position, Captain Nakamura. Your crew has witnessed classified operations. Debriefing teams en route." The words hung in the air, cold and final. For a moment, the command deck was silent, save for the hum of the ship's systems and the faint buzz of the comms. The reality of what had just happened was still settling in. The Valkyrie fleet, gone. Erased from existence in a span of minutes, as though they had never been there. In their place, the vast emptiness of space stretched out before us, the silence a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. I turned my gaze back to the view screen, still locked on the spot where the Enterprise had been just moments ago. But the immense warship was no longer there. The Black Titan, that symbol of humanity's hidden strength, had already begun to fade. It moved with impossible grace, its massive form gradually warping, distorting, as though it were slipping between the very threads of reality itself. Reeves stood beside me, his eyes wide in disbelief, unable to look away from the empty space where the Enterprise had once been. "Should we pursue, Captain?" His voice trembled, filled with awe. I could see the question hanging in his eyes, the same question that lingered in the minds of all of us on the bridge. Should we chase after the ship that had saved us? Should we demand answers from the unknown force that had emerged from the rift? I shook my head slowly, my thoughts grounding me in the truth of the moment. "No," I said, my voice steady but laced with a quiet certainty. "We were just introduced to humanity's best-kept secret. And I have a feeling, the myth wants to stay that way." The Enterprise had come, and in its wake, it had erased the Valkyrie threat as though they were nothing more than an afterthought. But now, it was retreating into the unknown. The ship had made its presence known, and it was already vanishing back into the folds of space, its colossal form blurring and distorting as if the universe itself was swallowing it whole. There was no pursuit. No need for answers. The mystery of the Enterprise was one that would remain locked in the vault of forgotten legends, a tale that no one would ever truly understand. And perhaps that was for the best. As I watched the empty space where the Enterprise had been, a strange feeling washed over me. It was as if the universe itself was taking a deep breath, exhaling the tension of the moment. The absence of the Valkyrie fleet, the absence of the monstrous ships that had threatened to annihilate us, left a hollow quiet behind. The silence was deafening. It was the kind of silence that followed a storm, where the chaos had passed but the air was still heavy with the weight of what had been. "We've lost them, Captain," Park said quietly, his fingers still hovering over the console. "The Enterprise has already warped out of our system. It's gone." I nodded, my eyes never leaving the view screen. "Let it go," I replied softly. "The myth is not ours to chase." There was a finality to it, a finality that felt both unsettling and reassuring. The Enterprise, the ship of legend, had come to our rescue, but it hadn't stayed. It hadn't lingered to answer our questions, to explain its existence or its purpose. It had simply appeared, obliterated the Valkyrie fleet, and then vanished into the folds of space, leaving nothing behind but the echoes of its impossible power. And in that silence, I understood something I hadn't fully grasped before. We weren't meant to understand. The Enterprise, this creation of forgotten history, wasn't something for humanity to control or comprehend. It was a force beyond our reach, a relic of a time far older and far greater than anything we had ever known. Its existence was a reminder, one that we were never meant to forget, that there were forces in the universe far beyond our understanding. Forces that could reshape reality itself with the flick of a switch, that could erase entire fleets with a single pulse of energy. The view screen shifted, its focus widening as the last remnants of the Valkyrie fleet, destroyed, erased, were nothing but distant memories now. And far, far beyond, the peaceful surface of Europa 7 gleamed in the starlight, its people safe. For the first time since the attack began, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The 200,000 civilians of the colony were safe. The mission, impossible as it had seemed, had been accomplished. I took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. "Park," I said, breaking the silence. "Set course for the rendezvous point. Let's get the survivors home." As the ship slowly turned, its engines humming to life, the bridge crew fell into a quiet rhythm. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the image of the Enterprise, the dark ship that had appeared from nowhere, wiped out a fleet, and then disappeared into the fabric of space like a shadow slipping through the cracks. A myth made flesh. A secret buried so deep that even we, the crew of the UESS Swift, would never truly understand it. And as we began our journey back, I couldn't help but wonder, what else was out there, hidden in the shadows of space, waiting to be uncovered? So, after the mysterious Enterprise warship vanished into the rift of space, the question remains, will humanity's secrets ever stay hidden forever? And what else is out there, in the shadows of the universe, waiting to be discovered? Remember, this story is just beginning. Pause for a moment to build curiosity before continuing. Don't miss the next video, where we'll uncover even more cosmic secrets. Thanks for watching HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Story. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and share your opinions in the comments below so we can bring you even more thrilling stories.